how do we know what we want to, we haven't discussed it since it was presented to us. How do we move ahead? How do we have discussions about what parts of that did we like, what parts don't we like? As far as space needs, do we not need to be discussing this instead of putting that, it was well thought out, it was very detailed, but to me, it seems like it's sitting on a shelf somewhere, and maybe there's stuff going on in the background that I'm not aware of, but shouldn't we be talking about what we want to see, what are the first steps, what we agreed with and what we don't agree with that study? I'm just throwing that out there for a discussion.
I'll just throw this out there. I agree. I think we did have a little bit of a discussion prior to budget. Talked about our first plan, first phase, which had to do with EMS and some of that. What we threw out there, different people, different committee chairs have come back and said, that's not going to work. Totally opposite of what our space needs study said. So that all put the brakes on all of that. I think that we talked about putting a little money in the budget for some design, whether it got in there or not. We're not sure. That's why I wanted to kind of talk about 2025 plans, but we certainly need to move on discussing something. I agree 100%. What it is, the first part, I think it would be nice to get Tom and Carissa back in the room, to get them involved in that moving forward, because they were part of that with Hunt of what our first phase would be. But like I said, that's kind of went sideways on us to the point where they claim that's not going to work, things that we were talking about doing. Not that we were planning on doing anything major this year other than some design work, but if we're going to do some design work, let's figure out what we're going to work on designing.
If I could, and it
Go ahead.
may not mean a whole heck of a lot, but in looking at what we're doing, part of the space needs was to do the assessment of our current structures. We have been working on fixing some of the structures. One of the other pieces that we looked at was the conflict resolution. That's in process and moving forward. There are parts that are moving incrementally, but we do have some things that we can point to that say we can take out of that space needs study, say that we have been looking at, that we have been addressing. Parking is one that we continue to address, and looking at some ways that we can do something with the parking as well. So as far as a major cosmetic, I don't think we're going to see any of that immediately, but looking and moving to positioning ourselves to address and assess some of those other needs, that's in process, and we should do that and be able to give that to the committee so that you can take a look and then see what's the next one we have to do. It hasn't really sat on a shelf. It appears that way, but that's what happens when government moves. It doesn't look like it moves at all. So it's slow, but we are making some progress.
Well, I think it's interesting, and you just said there are things going on, but we don't seem to hear that. So perhaps maybe more on a monthly basis, this committee could hear some of these things that we don't see or hear going on. So we're more in the loop about that, so it doesn't feel like it's just sitting on a shelf.
Yeah, and I think part of that happens is that these issues move forward, and they move forward in the form of resolutions and MOEs under committee structure. So they kind of blend into the woodwork, and you really don't see that that's a component of this. So it's really a part of the fabric, a thread that's woven into the fabric that you can't really see. And if you pulled that out, I don't know that the whole fabric would come apart, but it is woven in there, and there are pieces that are happening that aren't as obvious as maybe they should be, that are components of the needs space or the space needs plan. So
I believe that where Deb's kind of going with this is there's things that have been going on. I've been questions about things as a space needs chairman. I don't have an answer. I'm not in the loop. I think that, for example, the old mailroom and what happened there, I certainly think that this board, it ought to be aware. I don't care who thinks they've got the power to do it, but I think that we need to be brought in this loop to know what's going on. And that's the basic fact of what Deb's going after here is we need to know, instead of everybody asking us and why, and we don't have an answer.
right.
So,
Well, and the other side of it is, if there are questions, Carissa's available, other folks are available to answer those. And maybe we just need to continue to question that process. And there is always that question of, by resolution, that is a duty, and that's an assigned responsibility of the administrator. So, they look at their duties and expectations as carrying them out as directed. So it may have been one of those that was not ready for a lot of discussion. There was some internal discussion with folks, with Brenda and other members of the board, not necessarily the full board, but we need to make some space need adjustments. So
And I think that's why
understand
we
that folks
should-
are sensitive, but
Right,
yeah.
and I think that's why, and I know that you're here, Carissa's not here, Tom wasn't here. Those are the two biggest players in this. If we can get a monthly update, I don't think that bothers anybody.
Right.
So,
And I think if we can note when we're doing things through the various committees that it's related to space needs, whether it's 10 degrees of separation or whether it's 2 degrees of separation to the space needs study, that we should be noting that. So
right. Thank you.
Fred, Mr. Dowd?
Deb, you got anything else?
No, I'll be quiet.
I just, can I say something, Fred?
Oh, go ahead, Jan.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think whether you're talking about space needs or whatever, we need a priority list. We need to know what are the top 5 or 10 projects that this board wants to see done so that we can tell the administration, this is what we consider our priorities. It might not agree with what they think are our priorities. So until we have that, I don't think we can go any further with space needs or anything else. I think we have to determine what our priorities are.
Terry?
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that too, because we've talked about a priority list, we've had a priority list. Our priority list right now is what we believe is your priority list was the DPW project, which encompasses a whole lot more than just the DPW facility. That's a larger amount of money. And if you don't want us to continue with that, then by all means, tell us that, because that is our number one thing we discuss, is that project, that water line, that crossroads area. And if that is not what your priority is or your number one, then we need to know, because that's encompassing what you do with everything else you want on your list, because that's a large dollar amount. So just putting in the players in the field, I think I'm a player in the field, so I think I would need to be encouraged to join those meetings as well, because without the money, you're not going to be able to do any of those projects. So we got to figure that out. If you don't want that to be a priority, because that includes borrowing, there's a lot going on behind the scenes for that to try to make that happen for you guys. So I really do agree with that priority list. We've tried to make a scheduled date to sit down with a few people on that, and our calendars are all so swamped, we can't do that. So we're working on that, but you guys really do need to decide what are your priorities so that we have an idea of where to go.
Mr. Barnes?
I agree 100% with what Harry just said. My understanding, 3-4 years ago, that we're going just ahead with public works. And as far as I know, very little of them have cleared an area of Route 20. But where it's going from there, I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. But from my way of thinking, let's get it going. It's gonna cost more money if we wait another 4 or 5 or 10 years than it is if we do it now. And of course, doing it now, it's gonna cost a lot more money than it would have done if it was we did it 4 years ago. Thank you.
Well, just to add to that with the DPW shop, just to let you know that if we don't bid it, I don't know how far we have to go, but it has to be designed, bid, and to a certain point by the end of this year, that facility will need to be all electric when we have a gas line running through the middle of it. So just keep that in mind through what the state's got working. So that's going to be very important to move ahead. Absolutely.
Question for Mr. Boyd. So that would apply also to any hotel down to Crossroads, correct?
there seems to be some sort of movement, kind of a moratorium on the natural gas piece. I have been in contact with the IDA to see what their plans are with the gas line. The last discussion I had with Craig was that he was going to, again, confer with them and see if we could stub a line in there for the hotel.
And we're still on course for our additional funding for that, correct?
There's an additional 1.25 million that's sitting in a congressional earmark at this point in time, waiting for the
Right.
consolidated omnibus budget to come forward.
And we don't want to lose that.
We have also another application in for another we're in the process of putting another almost $2 million application in for additional funding for that. So there's money coming, and we're hopeful that when those funds come in, that'll offset any potential need for a county match. So
On the crossroads, but that would not be in the DPW facility.
but that will assist the DPW facility, because the water tank that is slated to go in at that location would serve primarily the DPW facility, would not impact any of the need or looking at the issues of establishment of a water district or a sewer district. That's going to be integral to some of the future development down there, but it will help to get someone to nail down and commit to the construction of a hotel at that site.
But the DPW, funding for the DPW facility itself would be different.
It could be, but there are other monies in play for this whole. I put my battery for my microphone in the slot thinking I was done, so I had to come back up here. But there are more monies in play that we're looking at for the DPW facility, things that we could do for a transportation modem through federal opportunities and other pieces that there is additional funding
Other
out there.
pots of money out there.
Other pots of money,
possibly.
yes.
Right.
We need to be creative and reactive when those opportunities come up, both at the state and federal level, so.
Mr. Ricky?
I just want to back up to the gas line. According to Tom Windus, and he can correct me when he's back if
Yeah.
I'm wrong. The reason he's hurrying so much to try and get that plan done at the DPW building is you need a stamped, approved blueprint.
By-
And the same thing's going to happen,
Right.
stubbing a line in at the crossroads isn't going to do any good unless there just needs some commitment and something
Yeah.
done, according to Tom. So I'm,
Yeah. And
We
my
need to
understanding
hurry.
is that needs to be done by the end of '25. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? Deb? Okay.
I'm turning it off and sitting down. Okay.
You want to sit down, Tim? All right. Thank you. Okay. Any new business? Good to the order? Motion to adjourn.
Hanchett moves.
Did you?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
John?